Okay, well, good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you're from. This is David from Israel, and I'm glad to have you with me, and I thank everybody for joining. Please feel free to ask questions on the sidebar. Um, Somebody's saying they're having problems hearing me. There's an echo. I apologize for that. Um, if we get some more of those, we'll try to deal with that technicality. Um, Okay, so before we get started, if you can see my slideshow, we're going to start with a poll. So I need your help with that. The poll is, what is your agenda today? Food safety, employee safety, both, or neither? So I'm going to go to the poll bar and see what the 235 people have to say.
Yeah, I've added that in the sidebar. What is your agenda? Food safety, employee safety, both, or neither? Neither. And the majority, probably around 2/3, are saying both, which is they're already attuned and primed and wanting to learn how maybe to do that, David. So that's good.
Okay, that's good to know. We're going to use that information. So let about 3/4 of the people are interested in both. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the chat bar and let's see. Okay, so I have a what am I doing wrong?
You need to be transitioning the slides in your PowerPoint. You're probably trying to do
That's what I'm trying to do here. And something is stuck. Let me just go back here. Okay. Okay, can you see my new slide with the picture of the guy?
Yes, Deming?
Okay. Okay, so Simon, you just spoiled my little quiz. So the question is, who recognizes this guy? So anybody recognize this person?
Oops.
You can write. You can write it down. Okay. So this is Professor Edwards Deming. He is our guru in everything to do with quality management, and of course, we owe to Deming ISO 9001 and every ISO that came after that, and especially the Deming Cycle of Continuous Improvement. And I always start my presentations with a mention of Edwards Deming because of the importance of this cycle in any management system, more so in a food safety management system or an employee safety management system, any management system. So let's just go over that a little bit. According to the Deming Cycle, everything that is done in a factory or in an organization should be done according to a plan. And after we finish planning everything we're going to do, we do exactly what we planned. And then our checking systems check to see if we have actually done what we planned. And finally, if we find out we didn't, or that we did not receive the results we expected to, in that case, we go on and act to plan it better. So, according to the Deming Cycle, all failure will be the result of either poor planning or poor doing. And the final result for the consumer who is sick or the employee who is injured, it doesn't matter what went wrong. But for us, as people in charge of people's safety, whoever they are, it's very important to know: are we planning properly, or are we doing it as we should be doing it? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So I know all of you people are food safety people. And we are putting some interest here in employee safety as well, and I'm going to be comparing them as we go along. So if the plan is good, everyone behaves according to the plan, nothing will go wrong. And this is true for all organizational agendas. It doesn't matter what you're planning. It could be environmental care, it could be employee safety, it could be food safety, it could be quality, it could be homeland security. Anything that you have a plan for will go. If you do it as planned and the plan is good, then nothing will go wrong. So what is your agenda? Well, we already saw your agenda. You're all food safety people, and this is the International Food Safety and Quality Network. So employee safety is not a natural agenda for us. And I must say that I started my career in food safety in 1993 with the Unilever company, and I had no knowledge nor real motivation to deal with employee safety. I'm a veterinarian. I'm not an employee safety person. And one of the first things that happened to me as an R&D manager and quality manager was I was asked by Unilever if I would be willing to translate some safety audits that were coming from the United States and from Europe. And because my mother tongue is English, I agreed. And for about 2 weeks, I participated in safety auditing. And I did a lot of translations. And I fell in love with the subject. And I went on to translate all of the safety courses that Unilever delivered in our country. And by the end of that period, I had become a safety expert and was given the authority to handle safety management as well as food safety management. And in a lot of large companies, they actually combine food safety and employee safety along with environmental care and quality management to different extents. So your agenda is food safety, but, well, how about this picture? And and I want to give credit to the foodtrucker.com website for this picture. I think it's a great picture. We have, if you look at this picture, you should be concerned, most of you, with food safety because of the handling of the meat on the grill, because of the environment in which it's being made. And but when I look at this, I also see simultaneously I'm concerned with this young woman's safety as an employee because she's handling heat with her exposed hand. So we may be observing behaviors that we'd like to modify that have an effect both on the consumer safety and on the employee safety at the same time. So if all failure is a result of poor planning and poor doing, as we said, then the result of a good plan will always be what we call the book. So when we say we're going to do it by the book is our plan. It includes all of the work instructions, procedures, guidelines, instructions, anything that anybody has to work according to is in the book. So instead of calling it the book, we can call it our integrated management system. And I'm pretty excited about that PowerPoint effect. I'll show it to you again so you can be excited with me. Okay, so working by the book is working according to our integrated management system. And this talk is going to be divided into two parts. Part one, I'm going to give you some theory, which is the basis for the second part, which is going to be some tips on getting synergy out of food safety and employee safety. So let's go on to some theory. So any management system is structured exactly the same. All management systems have the same structure. We're going to go through the anatomy of the management system. And system requirements always include internal requirements and external requirements. And the sum of both of these requirements make up what we call the book or the integrated management system. External requirements include requirements coming from customers, from regulators, and from other stakeholders, whoever they may be. I'm not going to go into detail with regard to external requirements because we have limited control over them. And the faster we get used to the idea that we must do what other people tell us to do because that's the way the world works, then everybody will be happier. I do want to make a point at this time that, from my experience, organizations throughout the food chain who refrain from setting internal requirements out of an attitude of, well, I'm not going to do it if I don't have to, but if I have to do it, I'll do it. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do, but I'm not going to volunteer any special requirement. Those companies generally will suffer from more and more external requirements. Our regulator and our customers will step in where we did not set requirements for ourselves. So I always recommend my customers be as proactive as you can in making your own internal requirements. Don't wait for the regulator or for your customer to ask you to do something, whether it be testing a metal detector, sanitizing, installing a sink, putting hairnets on people, and so forth and so on. Now, interestingly enough, when it comes to employee safety, the external requirers, the specifiers, change a little bit. A lot of customers are less concerned with employee safety of their suppliers, although they might be, but the regulator is always interested in employee safety. Let's go on to the internal requirements. That's what we're all here for. So internal requirements are generally split into two types. The first type is reactive, meaning something goes wrong, we get a customer complaint, we have a breakdown, we have an accident, we have a bad audit, and we react to that by looking into our system, applying the Deming Cycle. We planned, we did, we checked, there was something went wrong, so therefore we act on planning better, and our system gets more and more elaborate as we learn from our mistakes. This is what we call reactive internal requirements. The other type of proactive, and in this case, nothing happened, but we decide that we're going to add requirements onto our management system in order to prevent something wrong from happening. So the sum of our internal requirements are reactive and proactive. Of course, we would like to see the ratio between reactive and proactive requirements. We like to see it in the favor of the proactive. The more proactive you are, the less reactive you'll have to be. Naturally, in many organizations, because of the way life dictates the pace, we are more reactive than proactive, and this is unfortunate, especially with safety issues, employee safety, and food safety as well. So I'm going to focus on proactive and reactive internal requirements. I'm going to just click on that and talk about reactive and proactive. So reactive planning is relatively straightforward. One of the major processes that we use is incident and or accident analysis. And I use the word analysis in lieu of investigation, because we don't want to use the word investigation when something goes wrong. This is a euphemism. We use the word analysis because investigation makes us feel that that we're being investigated by the police or by the Secret Service, and they're going to find who's to blame and put them in jail. So this is not the goal of analysis of an incident or an accident. It's learning from our mistakes and trying to prevent it from happening again. Maybe one of the Food Safety Fridays in the future will do a seminar on effective incident analysis. It's something that has to be learned, and if it's mastered, then it's very, very beneficial. And another tool that we use in management system are corrective actions. That's usually the outcome of the analysis, where we put into action processes and add requirements to prevent recurrence. It's really important to differentiate between corrective actions and preventive actions. ISO 9001 is very clear on that, and so are the other standards. Corrective actions are done after something goes wrong. Preventive actions are done before something goes wrong. So moving on to proactive planning instead of reactive planning, which is doing something or deciding to do something before something goes wrong. We have two major processes. The one is preventive actions. Now, preventive actions, and ISO 9001 up to the 2008 version, including preventive actions, were in item 8.5.3 of the standard, and required organizations that are certified for ISO 9001 to take action against nonconformities that have not occurred yet by eliminating the root cause of what could go wrong. Now, we have to go a little bit into the psychology of this, because expecting an organization to actually do a preventive action based on the idea that something may go wrong is very, very difficult, which is why people who do food safety and employee safety and environmental care forever have been doing risk analysis as an alternative to preventive actions, which is more methodological. It goes for food safety using the HACCP, employee safety through analysis like HAZOP or JSA and so forth. So to understand how we put together a proactive plan in employee safety and in food safety, I'm going to go through one last bit of of theory, and then we're going to go on to some practical ideas. So I want to introduce the disaster pyramid. It should be very, very familiar to many, many of you. I did not invent this pyramid. I learned it when I started taking safety courses, and it is true for all types of disasters. Disaster pyramid goes as follows. So it says that for disaster to happen, that it could be people getting hurt from their food or an employee getting killed on the workplace. That in order for that to happen, it will be the unfortunate escalation of a major incident, which in turn is an escalation of a minor incident, which is being caused by a nonconformity or near miss. And at the bottom of the pyramid, we find all of our hazardous situations or hazardous behaviors, and that's what we call the bottom of the pyramid. And it's a statistical model. So it's a matter of chance. The more hazardous situations you have or hazardous behaviors you have, the higher a chance of escalation. And it sometimes cannot be foreseen. We don't know how a certain situation or a hazardous situation or behavior is going to play out. So it's just a matter of luck often. And in order not to arrive finally at a disaster, the only thing we can do in actuality and practically is eliminate those situations or behaviors that are hazardous. I'm going to show you an example that I put together for you. So what we see in the picture here is a door to a food plant. It's a little bit open. And this is what we will call a hazardous situation. This is also hazardous behavior because somebody left it open in violation of requirement. And everything's fine. I just add a little more drama onto the picture. So here we have a little rat outside the door. Now, it must be understood by everybody that the rat is not the hazardous situation. The open door is. The rat lives outside. That's his house. So he's allowed to be out there, the little rat. But as long as we don't leave the door open, he can't get in. As soon as we open the door, and are you ready? Everybody watch the rat. Follow the rat. Okay, now he's inside. So what just was a minute ago was a hazardous situation is now a nonconformity, or what we call a near miss. Nothing happened. Everything's fine. Nobody died. A little rat running around in our work in the factory or in the warehouse. But now we are in a non-conforming situation that could have been avoided. Will this happen every time a door is open? Definitely not. Will it happen if the door is closed? Never. And that's the idea behind the pyramid model. If we are unlucky enough, the presence of that rat can lead to a minor incident. And here we have rat droppings on packaging material. Now we have to put that material on hold. We have to bring in the exterminator. We have to maybe destroy materials, fill out non-conforming reports. We have to pay a lot of money. So we're now dealing with an incident. This happens every so often, not as often, of course, as the bottom of the pyramid, but it's statistical. So had the door not been left open, the mouse would not have entered, or the rat would not have entered, and this incident would have been avoided. But it happened, and that's life. Now we're dealing with a minor incident. If it escalates, then we move on to a major incident. And this is where we already hit the press, the recalls, devastating media. We have our social media going crazy about what's going wrong here. This does not happen often, but it all started with an open door. And finally, every so often, we'll have a disaster. People dying, companies closing, people being fired, people going to jail. And this happens in the food industry every so often. And now it's so far away from that open door that sometimes when the door is open, we don't see that outcome because it's so far away. It's so rare, which is why it's very difficult for us to modify behaviors at the bottom of the pyramid, because people don't believe that's really going to happen. And we're going to talk about that in a second, about a risk-taking psychology. Now I'm going to take that same pyramid and bring it back to its original purpose, which is employee safety. And we're going to start this time from the terrible, terrible outcome. This was in June 13th, recently. An employee fell downstairs and died. in Trinidad and Tobago. Very, very sad accident. Now, somebody falling down the stairs and dying is very uncommon, but it happens. If you go onto the U.S. Labor Department website and do a search for death and stairs, a few people a year die from falling down the stairs. Now, compared to millions of employees, that may be negligible statistically, but not for that person's family. It could have ended in a major incident. Most of them do. More people that die are people who become seriously injured. We don't want to be seriously injured, but it's often better than the alternative of dying. But that was an escalation of a minor incident, which could just end up with a broken leg, lose a few weeks of work, and thank God that you didn't die. But it could have also ended up just in a near miss. Somebody just falling down the stairs and picking themselves up, brushing themselves off, looking around to make sure nobody saw them because it's embarrassing, and that's that. But none of this would have happened had the person used the handrail. So the use of a handrail prevents death. Very, very seldomly, but it does. Because had the person used a handrail, they would not have fallen down the stairs. So it's the exact same model of hazardous situation or behavior. People don't use handrails hundreds of thousands of times a day and nothing happens to anybody, which strengthens the behavior because nothing's happening to me unless it does. If I'm lucky enough, and usually when I fall, then I just walking down the stairs, I'm not going to die. Well, or if I'm unlucky enough, then I'll break my leg, and if I'm lucky enough, I'll become seriously injured, and if I'm really, really unlucky, I'll die. We don't have control over that escalation. So we have a person here walking down the stairs without holding the handrail, carrying boxes. This is probably going to end up fine. Open door, probably going to end up with nothing. Faulty electricity, everything will be fine. And no soap in the soap dispenser at the factory, everything's going to be fine. These are the hazardous situations or behaviors that we deal with in safety, any safety management system. We're fighting the bottom of the pyramid. And this is what dictates the many, many, many regulations involved in our business. And for most people, it's very difficult to understand why we're asking for so many little tiny things. Just yesterday, I was in a training session in one of the factories that I work with, and got into an argument with middle management. What is the point of female employees working without false fingernails? Why can't they use their false fingernails? What's the big deal? They said, do you seriously believe that somebody's gonna find their person's fingernail in their food? Does that really make sense to you? And the answer is probably not. But when you feed millions of people, somebody's going to get the fingernail every once in a while. And if you don't want that to happen, you must remove the bottom of the pyramid. All food safety and employee safety regulation and internal requirements are based on that premise, that you must reduce the amount of behavior. Now, this is a peacock. And this is to remind you that we are people who are interested in food safety and those interested in employee safety, and that's the vast majority of the people on this panel. We are dealing with fighting biology. Animals and human beings have evolved throughout millions of years in order to take chances. Why is this peacock doing what he's doing? This peacock is saying, peacocks are very tasty. I've never eaten one, but I've heard. And this peacock is saying, hey, I'm not afraid. I don't care if I'm going to get eaten. And he's saying that because he wants to make an impression with the women. He is not very different from this peacock who is doing the same thing. Taking a chance of being a daredevil, and we see that behavior all the time. We are biologically programmed to do that. It's part of our basic evolution. And people who take chances, the daredevils, the ones who are willing to put themselves out on a limb, are the ones who are adored, who are promoted, and that is the type of human behavior that we have to deal with as people who promote safety. And this is a very, very big challenge. It is so challenging. People pay money to go into this situation, a lot of money, to become terrified, because we are so biologically programmed to take chances that we thrive on adrenaline. We become addicted to it, and we pay money to see scary movies. We pay money to go on scary roller coasters. And this girl here, she is absolutely terrified. When she gets off that roller coaster, she's going to go right back on it to get terrified again. So human behavior is a very strange thing, and it's one of the things that we have to deal with. And when we're talking about food safety or employee safety, there's no difference. When we're trying to modify risky behavior, we are up against Mother Nature herself. So we aim to reduce as much as possible, but we must also prepare for failure, which means that we will never be able to remove all hazardous situations or behaviors, which is why a lot of our management, some parts of our management system, a pretty lot of them, are designed to control escalation. So we put in a lot of controls in place besides the basic rules of good manufacturing practices or basic rules of employee safety in order to control escalation, which is why we'll have emergency preparedness, which is why we have operational controls, which is why we take samples, because sometimes our best efforts might fail, in which cases we want to be able to manage as much as possible that escalation. So a management system is it's a pretty intricate system. But when we're talking about behaviors, which is the subject of this talk, we're still going to be focusing on the bottom of our pyramid. So we're about halfway through, a little bit more. So I'm ready to go on to elements that can be pooled to create synergy between food safety and employee safety. And I'm going to show you a few of them and talk a little bit more about them. And I'm going to tell you one that I do not think should be pooled. And then we'll sign off. So the first process that I want to introduce you is what we call behavioral observation. There are many different behavioral observation programs out there. Some of them actually originated from employee safety and have proven to be very successful. One of the ones worth mentioning is the STOP program by DuPont company for employee safety that revolutionized the way we manage safety in the workplace from the 1990s. And behavioral observation is based on observing people, looking at how they behave, doing it intentionally, usually using an observation card or a checklist or some other type of method, and seeing people's behaviors, and then different degrees of intervention. So we want to reinforce people that are behaving properly and telling them why they do why they're doing what they're doing so great, and the people around them to show them as an example. And want to see people who are behaving unsafely and talk to them about their behavior and document it, and use that information for correcting their behavior and also for doing analysis and understanding where our weak points are to be able to plan our training better. Unfortunately, in most organizations that I've been involved with, this is done separately by two separate teams using two separate checklists looking at different behaviors, where in fact it's true that if somebody is not wearing their earplugs or not wearing their hairnet, they're causing the earplugs is an employee safety hazard and the hairnet is a food safety hazard, but they're both behaviors that are being driven by the same parts of human nature. And by training people to observe all human behavior at the same time it just saves resources and it's more effective. So it's pooling resources instead of doing a double observation program, putting it into one. Of course, we must be careful not to lose focus. Keep it simple, not try to do every single type of behavior at the same time. And people, I've often been told, we're going to confuse the employees, they won't understand, they don't know the difference between. This is not true. Employees in general are intelligent. They understand. They know the difference between a consumer accident by getting ill or injured from their food and by an employee accident. And at the end of the day, what we want is safe behavior. So it doesn't matter what category it belongs to. And now, this is not the subject of this talk, but if a lot of organizations also integrate their environmental care, and it's the exact same thing. If we observe people acting environmentally unresponsible, we can use the same platform to correct and analyze those behaviors as well. So that the first process that I want to talk about was behavioral observation. We look at housekeeping, we look at protective clothing or personal protective equipment, PPE. We look for unsafe behaviors on structured checklists. Another process that I've often see separate and should be together, pooled, are work instructions and induction training. So when an employee goes through their work instruction, sometimes they'll have the safety instructions that are separate, which protective equipment to use, how to deal with hazardous materials, and then the food safety instructions will be separate. Often it will be a different person delivering the two trainings for new employees. And there's no reason to do that for the same reason we talked about observation. Employees are intelligent and enough to be able to understand the list of behaviors, especially if you're a new employee coming into a new plant and you're told A, B, C, D, E, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. It shouldn't be coming from two separate people on two separate subjects. It should be integrated, in my opinion. Saying, okay, so you, whenever walking around our plant, be careful of moving vehicles. Keep your safety shoes on at all times. Wherever you go into a noisy area, you must use your protection. As soon as you enter the plant, you're entering a high hygiene area. You must wash your hands. You must sanitize your hands. And you must wear your hairnet and so forth and so on. So for me as an employee, the behaviors all blend into each other. And I am intelligent enough to understand that I'm protecting myself and our company's reputation and our consumers simultaneously. Third subject worth mentioning is internal auditing. We do a very large amount of internal auditing training courses. And whenever I do an internal auditor's training course, I do also external auditors, but mostly internal auditor training courses. Organizations will often ask me to do a training course for safety internal auditors and another one for food safety internal auditors. And in my experience, we can, with very small effort, relatively small effort, train auditors to be able to do an integrated audit for food safety, employee safety, and quality, and even environmental care at the same time. Our most successful internal auditor courses are the ones that are blended with all four agendas: environmental care, employee safety, product quality, and food safety. And the auditing is very highly effective because the auditor is looking at behaviors, looking at procedures, looking at adherence to procedures in a holistic manner. And they're trained to see everything at the same time. So an auditor walks into a room, looks around and sees simultaneously that there's a cracked lamp, that there's a blocked emergency exit, that there is a hazardous material not being kept in a regulation dike. And so we get the whole picture at the same time. It makes it's more cost effective and more efficient. Another subject worth using the same tools for are analysis of incidents and accidents and corrective actions. I've seen in many plants that there is a accident investigation or accident analysis procedure going on. It's usually mandated by law. And then when a quality issue happens or a food safety issue happens, they use a different methodology, different procedure, different team. There's no reason for that. It's the exact same tool. Root cause analysis is root cause analysis is root cause analysis. It doesn't make a difference what you're analyzing. So the people being trained to do that, we're putting a lot of money into their training. They should be trained and they should be able to help us analyze any type of nonconformity. Yes, they will need basic training on some safety in order to be involved in the accident analysis, but it is not science fiction at all. And same thing with our corrective action program. I often see corrective action has been very well implemented throughout food safety and quality, but the employee safety people are less familiar with that specific process and use different tools. So just pull the tools together. Anything going wrong in a plant should be analyzed and documented using the same quality tools. Analysis of data. This one's really interesting. I'll tell you a story. We have time for a story. few years back, I was called. One of my customers, plant manager, called me and said, "David, I need your help. Um, Somebody in my plant is going to die." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "We've been having so many employee accidents, and I just don't know what to do anymore. I mean, we've done everything in the book. Our plant is well equipped. We do training. We analyze every accident, and they're all human behavior, human behavior, human behavior. People are behaving poorly. They're making mistakes, and somebody eventually is going to get killed. And I can't sleep at night. Help!" So I put on my cape and flew down to the plant and said, "Let's see what's going on. If I can, maybe I can help." And I said, "Show me the accident investigations." There were dozens and dozens. They've been documented, every near miss, every first aid accident, every lost workday accident. Everything has been documented. And I went over the documents, and sure enough, they've been one accident after the other. Employee behavior, not technical matters, employee behavior. So I said, "Listen, something's going on here. This is not random, but I don't know what it is. How about you do this for me?" And I asked them to just analyze the accidents, just do an enormous meta-analysis. Take every accident, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, and for every accident, write down the age of the person involved, the day of the week of the month of the year. Write down the temperature that day, what product they're working on, what ethnic group they're coming from. I don't care. Just write anything you can think of, and see if there's a pattern. Look for something that's trending. That's why we analyze data, to look for trends, because everything should be going on. We should expect things to go wrong, but they should be going wrong randomly. And sure enough, within a few hours, they put everything on an Excel sheet. He called me back and he said, "We've got it." What they identified was a very slight but clear trend in the day of the week that the accidents were happening, and the age group of the people involved. And it was after the weekend, night shift and morning shift after weekends, there were more accidents, and the employees were younger employees, and it was apparent immediately they were coming to work under the effect of under substance effect, drugs and alcohol. They were not using drugs or alcohol at work, but they were using it during the weekend on their recreation time. And they were still under the influence when they got to work, not to the point where they were not functioning, but to the slight degree that made them a little more hazardous than other people. And they were involved in accidents. And this was all in goodwill. Nothing was being done here out of malice. The company was very, very sensitive about the issue and involved the social worker of that community where the plant was located and most of the people lived. And they intervened, and it was a great outcome. They educated the people about behavior, about substance abuse, and the great thing about the story is that they found a drop not only in the accidents but also in food safety incidents. Less complaints about foreign matter, less mistakes in production, because if you're going to be not concentrated on in your job, you're going to make any kind of mistake. And that's just an example of how important it is to analyze data and look for trends. And we should be doing it for employee safety. We should be doing it for food safety. And they are connected because they are basically, if it's a behavior issue, basically they are driven by basic behaviors, and they're going to cause all kinds of problems. Another example of data analysis that may have been able to prevent one of our recent recent 10-year food incidents. In 2008, 2009, there was a food safety incident at the Maple Leaf plant, and very, very unfortunate, very sad incident where there was the company was involved with Listeria monocytogenes, and people had lost their lives. And the company was investigated and was found that they were doing everything they should have been doing. Nothing was being done maliciously there. So it was really a sad story. But what the investigator did pick up on was that they could have been doing better trend analysis on their cleaning procedures to see deviations that were not random. And a lot of companies learned a lot from that and do a lot of analysis on their regular monitoring to try to pick up trends before something goes terribly wrong. So analysis data is one of those. I really like Pokaoke. I think Pokaoke is relevant to all behavior. Pokaoke, just in short, is engineering out the ability for people to make mistakes. And people will make mistakes. People are people. Human beings are they're a machine that's a wonderful machine, but it is limited, and it will often go wrong. So here we have on the left, you can see. I really like you guys' comments. You guys can't see me. I'm blushing here. Okay. So thank you, Lisa. Okay, back to the presentation. So on the left here, you see this is what we call a sanitary barrier set up in a food plant in order for people to make sure they sanitize their hands before entering. This is not a disciplinary machine. There's nothing to do with discipline. If you're bad and you want to not wash your hands, you'll find a way around it. Believe me, I've seen people circumvent these machines in the most ingenious ways. This is a machine to help you not forget or not just walk through and forget to wash your hands. So it is what we call Pokaoke. It's engineering to help us. So on the right, you see the same thing done for employee safety. This is a cutting machine that cannot be operated unless you use both hands simultaneously. And since that type of engineering has been put into cutting machines, many fingers have been saved because no matter how disciplined you are, if you're operating a machine that cuts, a guillotine machine or that type of machine, eventually somebody's going to put their hand in and cut it off. So if you have to have two hands to do it, that won't happen. So we use Pokaoke a lot. And walking around doing risk analysis, you can really put in a lot of small, sometimes changes that save us from a lot of trouble. Simplest thing I can think of is just a mechanism to shut the door by itself instead of asking people to shut the door behind them. Another thing that we should be looking at is behavioral-based training. And I just want to recap on the basis of behavioral-based training. Behavioral-based training means that we train people or educate people. I like the word education more, in order to actually deliver what they need to be delivered and not just do training because it's written that we have to do it. In other words, understanding the mechanism behind why people don't do what they're supposed to do all the time. And behavioral-based training is actually, I started doing it in employee safety before food safety, and it works for both. And it's understanding that in order for people to do what we expect them to do, if our plan is a good plan, they have to know what to do and how to do it. They have to be capable of doing it. They have to remember to do it, and they have to want to do it. And training must be specifically designed to address those four basic needs of behavior: knowledge, capability, remembering stuff, and motivation. And I do urge you to, whoever, if you have not listened to this webinar, the one I delivered this like 2 years ago, I think, behavioral-based food safety and alternative training methodology. There's Simon put up an article that I wrote on the IFSQN site, and if you're interested in that subject, you can read more on it. And there's also that webinar recorded there, so you may enjoy watching that. And it is exactly the same for safety. So if you have an interaction with your safety people in your plan and say, we've been doing the safety with this food safety training, we've had a lot of good results, but people are still not behaving safely for their own safety, it's identical and it's worth looking at. And I do not recommend, and I don't want to be misunderstood, I don't recommend merging the two training. I think that is too much. I think we should do focus training on the behaviors we want to modify. But I think we should be using the same logic, the same theoretical logic behind, and the same tools. So effective training is the same when we base it on behavior. Now, I do not think it's a good idea to pool risk analysis. I think risk analysis is very highly professional. The employees are involved as expert consultants in these processes. It is not a behavior modification tool, and I think that HACCP should be HACCP, JSA, or any other. JSA is job safety analysis. That's the HACCP I like best for employee safety, but there are a few models out there. They're a little bit different from each other. Food is food, and people are people, and hazards are different hazards. the different scenario. So I think they should be separated. Again, this is my opinion. Everybody can do whatever they want. And I'm saying this because HACCP, for instance, HACCP can be used, the methodology, and even the same setting can be used for vulnerability assessments. There's been a lot of talk about that lately. It can be used for quality and image, company reputation risk assessments. So HACCP is a great tool. I don't find it to be as beneficial for employee safety, so I do think that should be kept separately. So we're finished now. Are we wrapped up? I'd like to do another poll just to get your feedback. Do you think you might take action to enhance synergy between food and employee safety processes following this webinar? In other words, may you do something differently? Have I maybe given you some food for thought? Then the answers would be definitely, probably not, or no way. I'm going to see what the poll says. Polls.
Okay, yeah, the polls in the sidebar. We want to see high numbers here. And
no, I want everybody should write whatever they feel.
Yeah, of course.
I'm okay.
Of course.
If everybody says no way, I'm okay. I'll go cry, but I'll get over it.
Well, nobody said no way, David. 3% probably not.
Okay, I respect that. 3%, go for you. Good, good for you guys. But I'm really happy that definitely 6 out of 10 people listening to this will go do something about it. I think it's worth it. So I really thank you for that.
Just type in the sidebar as well. What would you do? What one thing will you do as well? If you said definitely, just type in the sidebar what one thing that you might do when you go back. Sorry, David, go on.
Okay, that's it. I'm done. Thank you, Parker. Thank you for that. Nobody's ever told me that before, Parker. So Parker loves my voice. He loves my voice. That's right. I've been, for my good looks, I've been given compliments, not for my voice. So thank you.
Well, I've got, yeah. Can you stop sharing now, please, David?
Yes. Yeah. I'll stop sharing.
It was the comments throughout. Best webinar, fantastic presenter, etc. Love your voice, etc., etc. Well, it's true. It was absolutely fantastic. Again, you've taken a subject. If you can click this stop share, the circular, and get yourself back on webcam. Yeah, you've taken a complex sort of subject and you've made it simple and entertaining and interesting as well. I've actually used the triangle of. I've used that in safety training myself, but not as interesting as the way you presented it. So.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Right. So we've got David for another 10 minutes. So any questions related to the subject? We're happy to have compliments. Well, David is a specialist, so you can keep typing them, but we'll try and pick out a question or two from amongst all the plaudits. Right. What have we got there? As if in some situations we have to choose between the employee safety and food safety, then what should we do?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I don't think there are many situations like that, but I think some situations that Asif mentioned, I think that would be a good word to use. And it happens every once in a while. We do find the common ground for the interest of everybody. One of the examples is floor structure. It's one thing that the safety people always want a floor that you can't slip on because people slip on floors that are wet and oily and they get injured. And then, of course, our food safety people want the floor to be highly well sanitized, so it has to be a little smoother. So there are engineering solutions for that. But if you cannot make safe food and protect your employees at the same time, then you should be doing something else. That's my opinion. Maybe maybe gardening or something. But if you're in the food business, you have to be able to protect your employees and protect the public at the same time. And every single challenge should be looked at, and a solution found.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah, fine. Todd, what was the name of that particular triangle again? Has it got
You're talking about that pyramid, or the triangle you're referring to? Yeah. It's called the pyramid of safety. It's not my model. It's a model I learned when I was little. And I've been using it since. Some people put numbers on it, but it's just guessing. But the idea behind it, the statistical truth of it is always there. It doesn't matter the numbers. There'll always be less disasters than hazardous situations.
Yeah. Is that like smoke? Is the analogy like smoking in a way that, when you're young and you're smoking, you don't realize every single cigarette, that in 20, 30, 40 years time, you could die because
Right, and because
the leap.
right, and because we're genetically designed to take chances and not look at what's going to go wrong. Then we're especially when we're young, then we'll take more chances than when we get older. That's why younger people are more careless than older people, because it's something that is developed over time. People develop a sense of risk assessment, and when you're young, you are empowered with the feeling nothing's ever going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And so this is a biological fact. It's all animals behave that way, and so do human beings. So that's why regulation is so frustrating, because try to enforce a behavior that people do not believe that's justified. Who are you to tell me what to do? Why should I not smoke pot? I'm 17. I know what I'm doing. Nothing's going to happen to me ever. So that's what we deal with as people who do education and regulation.
Yeah. Okay. And it's our job as food safety quality managers to make that connection. Okay, Xavier. So Xavier is going to go back to his place and identify both food safety and safety issues when conducting internal audits, and also try and emphasize employee safety in food safety training. So he's trying to link the two subjects. Any tips?
I want to make a mention of something interesting, that if we look at the new ISO 9001, and look at the new ISO 14001, and we already have a sneak peek preview of ISO 22000 that's going to be coming out next year, and OSHA's 18001 for employee safety is being made into ISO 45001. They're all going to be streamlined with the same clauses, the same requirements. They're going to be linked together with each other, and only where they differ from each other will be differences. The rest will be identical, which makes sense. So when you do an audit, you'll use the same checklist for everything.
Yeah, makes sense. Tom, any tips to help motivate employees to change behaviors?
A lot. I do recommend watching that webinar. We put a lot of ideas out there, and we will be doing a 4-hour training specifically on that, because it's an issue that must be itemized. It's just too much so a lot of things that must be done.
Yeah. That just to go further on that, we are working on a training course, and we're looking probably early October, professional behaviour, with David as the speaker, so the trainer, the educator, and so really looking forward to that. Nicole, what is the best tool to ensure we are tracking incidents to determine need for program enhancement?
If I understand the question, there should be some kind of a register system to register every incident. And the more incidents we collect, the more information we'll have to do analysis. So, and we're talking about employee safety, and we're talking about, of course, lost workday accidents, which are mandated by law, but also look at any other type of accident, first aid accidents, near misses, incidental accidents, and put them all together into the same database, because the value of analyzing an accident where somebody almost got killed and analyzing an accident where somebody actually did get killed is the exact same value. In other words, it doesn't make a difference. The outcome of the accident is not relevant to the need to analyze and understand. So they have the same value in a database. So the severity of the outcome is not relevant for the database. What's relevant for the database is the situation that allowed it to occur. One other tip that I've done at several plants is do an analysis of the safety first aid box. You learn a lot from first aid boxes. Many plants have a first aid box where you can get a Band-Aid or maybe an aspirin for a headache or some iodine for cuts and bruises. And by analyzing the consumption of those boxes in different areas, you can learn a lot about the level of carelessness or need for intervention before somebody really gets hurt.
It's a good idea. Right. A couple of the attendees are asking, well, let's call them difficult employees, violent employees, grouchy employees. How do you get them engaged? How do you approach them and get them on side?
Well, the key to any behavioral program is to make sure that the work environment is a nice environment for people to work in. So they should be fairly paid. They should get proper attention for their own needs. The employer should make them, that's what we call, get people committed to their company, to believe in the company, to share the company's success with them. And if somebody is disgruntled enough that you think they won't be participating, then it's time to say goodbye. And we should not be keeping people who don't enjoy what they're doing and don't feel committed and and the company is not their home for them. We should be nurturing a culture and environment where people feel at home in the company, and it's worth every penny. Making a nice rec room for the employees, maybe with a ping pong table, a good cooler, giving good lunches, all that kind of stuff, which is expensive, is worth every dime because it's going to come back in productivity, in loyalty. So it's just money well paid, well spent.
But, yeah, David, do you agree with the like you say, lots of things there to, a caring company, a company that wants to give the employees little things like that, ping pong or whatever, free fruit, and newspapers, and things that don't cost a lot. But on the other hand, a company that's firm, that doesn't let the culture be dragged down by certain individuals who won't change or will not, despite best efforts, will not get with the program. Do you agree with firm but fair and caring approach?
Yeah, I think there's no contradiction, and this is something that is often misunderstood. You can be a fair, compassionate, lovely organization and be very strict at the same time, just like a parent. That you support your children, you give them whatever they need, but if they go out of line and they endanger themselves in any way, we become extremely strict and very, very straightforward, and that's the right thing to do and implement. And if you are a loving, caring employer, and at the same time are very strict when it comes to safety and the company's reputation, people will relate to that. It makes sense. But if you're only on the one side, then you're going to lose either your customer's confidence or your employee's confidence. If you want to gain both, then you have to play the game at the same time. That's my answer.
Okay, and Jacob was sort of saying, is management commitment important in ensuring food safety and employee safety? Well,
the answer is yes. That's the answer. It is. Not only it's not. I think important is an understatement. It's crucial.
Yeah. Right. Margaret's asking, do you have a checklist? I think maybe talking about an audit checklist. I think, Margaret, do you have a checklist example? I don't know. I think it could be.
Yeah, if Margaret wants to write me an email, and I can maybe tell a little bit more what she needs, and I'd be happy to help. Maybe able to help there. Just send me a mail and let me know.
Okay.
What she needs, and we'll try to help.
Right. Paul has said that this webinar has been a great tool for me, and it has, no doubt about it. For all the people who attended today, the lucky ones to watch you live, and all the ones that will watch the recording over the coming weeks and months, it's been fabulous. So on behalf of myself and the IFSQN and everybody on the Food Safety Fridays, thanks very much, David, and I can't really looking forward to working with you on the training course as well. So thank you and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great, safe weekend. Bye-bye.
Right, that was David Rosenblatt. Fantastic. Don't need to say any more about it. All I need to do is set the certificate in the sidebar, so you can grab that. So click the download now button, the orange download now button. You'll be taken to the website page on the IFSQN. You should be able to click a button to get your certificate there from Dropbox. Print it and sign your name, or open it in Paint or a graphics package and type your name, and there you go. There's your certificate of attendance. We'll follow up with an email within an hour or so with the presentation slide deck, the recording, and some other things. But for now, that's it. Thanks for your attendance. I've really enjoyed today, and I'll hopefully see some of you next week for the training webinar that we will be sending information about. If not, we'll see you in a couple of weeks on the next Food Safety Fridays. Have a nice weekend. Happy Friday. Look after yourself and keep safe. Peace.